So please do me a favor, stand to your feet, and please welcome to the stage my friend Stephen Curtis Chapman.
How's everybody doing? All right, I'm gonna need a little bit of help from y'all now. While you're standing, you look like you're in a good place to start singing a little bit with me. And so, will y'all help me sing this? Everybody, here's your part. Sing it. La la la, la la la, la la la, la la. Let me hear y'all. La la la, la la la, la la la, la. Imagine this. I get a phone call from Regis. He says, do you want to be a millionaire? They put me on the show and I went through life. I'm a spare picture there. I act like nothing ever happened. They're all the money in the company. Well, I've been getting more than Regis ever gave away. I was a dead man who was come to come out of my grave. I think it's time we're gonna make a little bit of noise in San Francisco. Y'all ready? Let's make the neighbors get the word out. Come on, crank up the music, climb a mountain and shout. This is life we've been given, made to deal it loud. So la 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 la. Is a living declaration. Comes from the song we were made to sing. We're gonna wake the neighbors, get the word out. Come on, crank up the music, climb a mountain and shout. This is life we've been given, made to live it out. So la 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 la. Thank y'all so much. It is so good to be with you. Jeff, if you can listen to my mix, something is really weird. I'm not sure if I have the right microphone or something, but I don't know. Just take a listen, because my vocal sounds kind of funny. Sorry. A little technical difficulty. But, hey, you guys sound awesome, and you look awesome, and I'm so excited to have you here with me tonight. And I'm hoping you feel like singing, because I need you to sing with me a lot, okay? Y'all just, if you know the words, sing it. If you don't know the words, just make something up. I do that myself often. So just make it rhyme if you can, but that's not even that important, all right? All right, here's your part. Y'all sing this with me. Here we go. Oh, 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 come on. Oh, 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 yeah. I hear the clock beat. Pull me out of my street, tell me there's a day ahead of me. Trying to wake up, sipping on a hot cup with a little lady in green. And I'm praying about the man I wanna be, singing God please take all of me and fill me up with your love. Take these thoughts that I'm thinking, take these words that I'm speaking, take me over till I fall on my face. Stand right here in my place. Yeah, this prayer that I'm playing. Take me over, take me over. Ready? Here we go. This is what I'm sure of. I can only show love when I really know how loved I am. when it overtakes me, it animates me, going from my heart to my hand. So pray, Lord, help my heart believe. Right now you're singing over me, and fill me up with your love. Love, take these songs that I'm playing. Love, take these words that I'm speaking. Love, take me over. Love, fill up all of my space. Love, stand right here in my place. Love, in this prayer that I'm praying. Love, take me on. Love, take me on. Take me help my heart believe. Right now you're singing on for me. Fill me up with your love. Take these thoughts that I'm thinking. Take these words that I'm speaking. Love, take me over. Love, fill up all of my space. Stand right here in my place. Love, in this prayer that I'm praying. Love, take me on. Love, 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 take me on. Love, take me on. Love, take me on. Thank you very much, San Francisco. All right, y'all keep this up. I may never leave. I may just stay in San Francisco forever. This is awesome. You guys are so fun. All right, I'm gonna let you take a break. I'm letting you sit down and get a little bit comfortable, but not too comfortable. Like no nodding off or anything like that. Okay. Listen, I am so excited to be here with you guys and to get to be celebrating this SCC solo tour and to get to bring it right here in the heart of San Francisco to this theater. And thank you guys. I'm serious. This has been so fun, so much fun to do these concerts. Just me and my guitar. I have been blessed over the years with some of the best musicians in the world to be on stage with me, and I've loved every minute of it. But something about just taking these songs back to the way they began, just me and the guitar, and taking you on a journey tonight, which is what I really want to do. And tell you, my story, and we're going to go way back. I'm going to try to cram as much music as I can in. We're going all the way back we're going back to the mullet years even. I mean, we're talking, right? You know what I'm saying? Yes. See? Thank you very much for that picture. That'll be quite enough. That was actually, I don't know, I still can't understand why someone who really loved me at the time didn't, maybe while I was asleep, just go ahead and cut that off. But, and I know you're laughing, but I know there are some of you guys out there that did that too. Don't even act like you didn't. There weren't some mullets out there in the audience, I know. And that was actually a picture of taking my first time I got to be with Billy Graham, talking about the journey, the amazing places that I never imagined, as a kid growing up in Kentucky, that I would someday get to be on the platform, not only once, but several times with Reverend Billy Graham. And this was my first time, and I'll never forget telling my grandmother, who was so excited, she loved everything about Billy Graham, as we all do and did, but she was so excited when I told her. I said, "Grandma, guess what? I'm going to get to be at a part of a Billy Graham crusade." And the first thing she said was, "Well, that's just wonderful. Are you good? You're going to get your hair cut, right?" And she was so sad when I said, "No, Grandma, but I'm going to wear a suit. I'm going to wear a tie. I promise. I will dress up really good for it. But I'm not going to be able to get a haircut for that." So anyway. But here's the only deal I need from you is just if you know a song, if you hear a song that sounds familiar, and you know it, then I just need you to help me, all right? Because I'm going to try to get as much music as I can. But I need you to sing it. I need you to help me. So here's one. Some of you might remember. Y'all have me on this. You say your heart is aching. You've got trouble in the making. And you ask if I'll be praying for you, please. And in keeping with convention, I'll say yes with good intentions. To pray that I'm making mention of your need. Since we have this moment here at heaven's door, we should start knocking now. Tell me, what are we waiting for? Let us pray, everywhere and every way. Every moment of the day, it is the right time. For the Father above, He is listening with love, and He wants to answer us, so let us pray. Yeah, yeah. So when we feel the Spirit moving, prompting, prodding, and behooving, there's no time to be losing, let us pray. Okay, here's one of the things about tonight that's going to be a little different. See, all of these years with these amazing musicians on stage with me, what I've never really let you in on is that I am a bit ADD, and my brain sometimes can wander off the beaten path. But because I have a band up here on stage with me, if I do something like I'm doing right now in the middle of a song, I will get a drumstick thrown at the back of my head. So I have to stay on course, you know? Not tonight. So wherever that little brain of mine takes me, I might just see where we go, you know, like this. For example, here's the thing. See, it has been mentioned that I've, won a few awards over the years, and every one of them have been amazing and a great encouragement and a blessing. But I think that perhaps one of my greatest accomplishments creatively has never been acknowledged. And so I would like to point it out tonight for you. And that is the fact that, as far as I know, I'm the only songwriter to ever fit the word behooving in a song lyric. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that seems like something, and it goes by very quickly. And I sometimes think, they might have missed it. And I don't want to miss this moment of poetic whatever it is. So I'm going to give it to them again and let you get ready for it, okay? You ready? So here it comes. So when we feel the Spirit moving, prompting, prodding, and behooving, there's no time to be losing, let's pray. Let the Father hear us say what we need to be conveyed. Even while this song is playing, let us pray. Just because we say the word Amen, it doesn't mean this conversation needs to end. Let us pray, everywhere and every way. Every moment of the day, it is the right time. For the Father above, He is listening with love, and He wants to answer us, so let us pray. Yeah, yeah. Let us pray. Oh, let us pray. Let us pray. Oh, let us pray. Pray in the morning, pray at night. We gotta pray all day, anytime, in the right time. Let us pray. Oh, yeah, yeah. Let us pray. Well, okay, so tonight, if there is a theme kind of what I feel like has been going on in my life as of late, it is the word remember. And that's what so much of this tour, you may have seen on the poster or whatever, a night of hits and history and influence. And this tour kind of started, the idea for this started about 5 or 6 years ago when I started writing a book. That came out about 1.5 years ago called Between Heaven and the Real World, My Story. And it was the first time I've ever sat down and just really retraced my steps of my life, my musical journey, my faith journey, but my whole life. And I was reminded, and really in a very profound way, of the importance and the power of remembering. It's an amazing thing that happens, and I know certainly happened for me in this process. And I think it reminded me again, even if you look in the Old Testament, you look in the Bible, where God told the Israelites, His followers, to remember, to build tangible memorials, places that they could go back to and retell the story, because they were going to need that. And God, I think, knew that about them. I think He knows that about us. I believe it's the reason He's given me these songs over the years, because they've been like mile markers on my journey of faith. And what's amazing, I believe, at least because I've already heard from some of you who've said things like, your music's kind of been like a soundtrack for our journey, our life, our family, our faith journey. And that's just an amazing thing for me. And so cool at this point in my journey to get to go back and revisit those places and to remember. And something incredible happens, because we go back and we see over and over again, I know I have God's faithfulness in my journey and in my life. And so it's been a powerful thing for me, getting to tell my story and just share kind of the good and bad and the ugly, and yet God's goodness and faithfulness in all of it. And so that's kind of what I want to do with you guys tonight. I started dreaming about this idea, if I could sort of set that story to music and then take you guys on the journey with me, because again, I think it will take us back, all of us, to places on our journey and maybe help you remember some pretty important places in your journey. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, my little hometown of Paducah, Kentucky, which is a real town. I promise, not making that up. It's on the map, in fact. If you use a magnifying glass, you will find it. Located, and this is really true, if you look really close, you will see on either side, exactly on either side of Paducah, are the two towns, Monkey's Eyebrow and Possum Trot. So, tells you a little bit about me right there. That's kind of more than you probably even wanted to know, but that's where this all began for me. So we're going all the way back to the beginning, and I call this Chapter 1 of the life of Stephen Curtis Chapman. It goes like this. On the bank of the Tennessee River, in a small Kentucky town, I drew my first breath on cold November morning, and before my feet even touched the ground, with the doctors and the nurses gathered around, I started to dance, yeah, I started to dance, yeah. A little boy full of wide-eyed wonder, footloose and fancy-free, but it would happen as it does for every dancer there. Stumble on truth I couldn't see, and find longing deep inside of me, yeah. Saying I am the harmony, the harmony. I'm the eyes underneath the sight. I see clearly and just the body. I need the life I'm over me. Go through the motion, who good purpose to change. I am the dancer I need, the Lord of the day. Let it down, let it down, let it down, yeah. All right, that's chapter 1. And here's chapter 2. Ready? When I was 8 years old, I decided to follow Jesus. Yeah. I started down that road. God had told me that this path that leads to heaven, He said it will not be the easy way, but I found that to be true. And I also found, even though I found out there's no better place on earth, and the road leads to heaven. true story. 8 years old, if you heard the lyrics there, when I began my faith journey, when I began to follow Jesus. And I'm going to back up just a little bit because how I got there was, so I grew up in a home where there was a lot of music. Right out of the gate, as a little boy, the first sounds I heard were the sounds of bluegrass and folk music, growing up in the bluegrass state of Kentucky. So my dad played music. My dad's a great guitar player, still is, and an incredible singer. And so when I was a little boy, whenever there was music going, I wanted to be right where it was. And my dad was also a songwriter. And early on in my life, he was trying to write songs and go to Nashville and try to get his start as a songwriter. And so he and his buddies, they would all come over to our house. Our kitchen was a recording studio, and my dad had a little reel-to-reel tape recorder that he would set up in the kitchen and record. And wherever there was music, I was in the middle of it. I always wanted to be there, just because I loved it, and I loved, being around my dad, and I loved, hearing him play the guitar. And so I wanted to play the guitar. I wanted to be just like my dad. And so I was about 6 years old, and I got my very first guitar, and it was a hand-me-down. My brother had it first, and he played with it a little bit, but he wasn't that interested. But I was very interested, and I was so excited because it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It had a picture of Roy Rogers on the front of it. And so I just thought, this is awesome. This is awesome. So I would drag this thing around with me everywhere I went because I wanted to learn to play. And my dad, who was a guitar teacher and still is, actually, he's almost 80 years old. He'll be turning 80 this year. And he's still, every day of the week, you can find him at Chapman Music teaching guitar lessons, and still plays great, still sings great. And so he finally, I think he got tired of hearing me make so much racket on this guitar because I would just bang on it and try to play it. He sat me down, 6 years old, and he taught me my very first song on the guitar, and I still remember it. Here's the first song my dad taught me on the guitar. Ready? I hear that train a-comin', it's roaring down the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when, and I'm stuck in Folsom prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps on rolling on down to San Antone. Yeah, Johnny Cash. I love that song. Now, you might be wondering, what is a father thinking when the first song he teaches his son on the guitar is a prison song? And if you're not wondering about it, you will definitely start to question his wisdom when you realize that he didn't stop there, but he taught me the second verse. When I was just a young boy, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. There! Seriously, what are you thinking? So, I don't know. I mean, I'm 6 years old and I'm just at the top of my lungs. I shot a man in Reno! Not thinking anything about it. And so my mom was taking me and my brother to church every Sunday, trying to keep us out of the prison that my dad was sending me into. So we had this thing going on. And Dad, we didn't really go to church. Dad, they had when they were children, and we were in the buckle of the Bible Belt there in Kentucky, so that's where you were supposed to be on Sunday morning. But that's really all it was at that point. It was just the place that you went on Sunday. And my dad, because he was out playing music the night before, he was always sleeping in on Sunday. And so our pastor of the little church, the Baptist church my mom would take me and my brother every Sunday to, Olivet Baptist Church, the pastor, Brother David McMichael, would, on his way to church, stop by our house because he knew where my dad's bedroom window was. And he would sneak up to the window every Sunday and he'd go, "Herb Chapman, get out of bed and come to church with your family." And he'd go on to church. And my dad, I think they call that door-to-window evangelism. But it worked because my dad did come to church. He came to church with us. And I was 7 years old. And it was a revival. It was every night of the week we had these services going on. And I didn't know a lot of what was happening, and I don't remember a lot other than I do remember being, first of all, just very excited. You know, that Dad was coming to church with us, and not just once, but night after night. And by the end of that week, I began to see something radically change in my home and in my family. And by that, I mean this. My dad and mom, my mom was 16 when they got married. My brother was born very shortly after they got married. And my dad didn't have a father growing up. And he was 19 when they got married. They did not have a very good chance of making it at all. My dad's father had left home when my dad was about 3 years old. And my dad met him like 2 occasions. He said that he remembers on the playground of his elementary school. And he didn't tell me this until just a few years ago, because you didn't talk about it. You didn't ask questions when I was growing up. I just knew that my dad's father was not in his life, nowhere in the picture. But Dad said he met him twice, and it was on the playground when a very disheveled man kind of showed up under a shade tree off in the distance, and a kid came over and said, "Hey, that homeless guy over there wants to talk to you." And Dad went over, and his father introduced himself, and he did it one other time, and told my dad he was trying to get his life straightened out and come home and be a good father, and he loved him. And so my dad carried all this shame and all this hurt and through his life. And so now he's married, and my dad's father died when my dad was about 9 years old. And so he, when fights would happen, as they did often in my home growing up, there were doors slamming and loud voices, and then Dad would leave, because that's the only thing he knew, that you do when things are hard. And so he would drive away, and my brother and I would be crying and wondering if he's going to come back. Well, now, it wasn't like all that changed in terms of the fighting and the fussing and the brokenness. But now, what would happen is my dad would say, "Wait a minute, stop. Let's get on our knees together." And we would hold hands and get on our knees as a family. And I would hear my dad talk to God and say, "God, I don't know how to be a father, but you're my Father in heaven. Will you show me? Will you help me be a father? I want to be a better dad to my sons than I had. And please help me. And please help me love my wife. I don't know how to do that. No one showed me, but you can show me." And then my mom would pray prayers like that as well. And so even as a little boy, I saw the transformation, happen in them. And I started to see repentance and forgiveness and grace modeled, for me. And so we began to attend church together regularly. And on Sunday morning, now we're sitting in church. Brother David's preaching. He's done having to stop by our house and beat on the window anymore. And he's glad. My dad's glad. And so we're sitting, and I'll never forget. I was 8 years old. So this was a few months after this change happened in my family. And I'm sitting here listening to Brother David, and it gets to the end of the message. And I don't remember the message or the sermon, but I remember very clearly when he said these words. Jesus says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." And as soon as he said that, as clearly as anything, I could feel and hear like Jesus knocking at my heart. And what was so awesome is that it wasn't about what happened in my parents' lives, but it was like, I felt like Jesus, was now coming to me. And so I'm like, I'm listening, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. And Brother David, continues. And Jesus, says, "I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone will open the door." So I'm like ready, I'm going to open the door, and I'm listening, I'm hanging on every word. And then, see, Brother David's a King James Version man all the way. So this is where the problem starts, because he carries on. He says, Jesus says, "I will come in and sup with him." Well, he lost me, because I didn't know sup. That was not in my understanding. The only thing I could come up with was Jesus was going to walk in the door and say, "Sup." I just didn't know sup. And basically, I would come to understand that's kind of what Jesus was saying. I want to come in to your life and into your your house, and I want to be a part of whatever is up in your life, whatever's going on. I want to have a relationship with you, right? I mean, he was saying, I want to have a meal with you. But look at the Bible, and I love this about the Bible because I found this out even just recently when I was reading about Jesus calling Matthew, that guy that, people didn't want to be around, didn't want to have a relationship with. He calls him to come follow him. And what's the first thing he says? You remember? He says, let's have a meal together. I want to sit down and have a meal with you. And then when he calls Zacchaeus, the little guy up in the tree that we learned about, or I did in Sunday school, come down and go into your house because we're going to have a meal together. It was Jesus saying, I want to have a relationship with you. So as a little guy, 8 years old, that's when my relationship began with Jesus. And so, I would realize, even as I started to look back at my story, even how many of the songs that I would write, the seeds were first planted in my life way back then. Because I started to read the Bible, and we would read the Bible as a family, and I'd go to Sunday school, and I'd hear the story, how Jesus called fishermen to come and follow him. And I loved that. I remember loving that idea because if you didn't find me with a guitar in my hand when I was a little boy, I had a fishing pole in my hands because I loved to fish. I had a little pond by my house. And it would be years later that I would write this song. But I think it began with some of those first stories that I began to hear about Jesus calling the fishermen to follow him. And I would eventually write this song about it. Nobody stood and applauded them. So they knew from the start this road would not lead to fame. All they really knew for sure was Jesus had called to them. He said, come follow me, and they came. With reckless abandon they came. Empty nets lying there at the water's edge, told a story that few could believe and none could explain. How some crazy fishermen agreed to go where Jesus led, with no thought for what they would gain. For Jesus had called them by name, and they answered, we will abandon it all for the sake of the call. No other reason at all but the sake of the call. Wholly devoted to live and to die, not for the sake of a creed or a cause, not for a dream or a promise, simply because it is Jesus who calls. And if we believe, we will obey, and we'll answer. If you know it, sing it with me. We will abandon it all for the sake of the call. No other reason at all but the sake of the call. Wholly devoted to live and to die for the sake of the call. For the sake of So my family and I started to sing together in church, okay? Because my brother and my dad, played instruments. Mom, it was totally the daddy sang bass, mama sang tenor. Me and little brother joined in. That was our deal, and it was awesome. We started to learn some Bill Gaither songs to go along with our Johnny Cash prison songs, and Offset, and And so we would sing in church together, the Chapman family singers. My brother and I, we had our little matching denim outfits, and it was awesome. It was such a special time in our lives to get to sing together. We would practice. We practiced a whole lot more than we sang, because my dad was a firm believer. If you're going to do something for the Lord, you're going to do it with excellence. And so we would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and then we'd sing here and there in church. And I loved the songs that we were learning. I loved how my dad took so seriously the words and the lyrics of these songs, and he would look at them and say, think about what we're singing here. And we loved the song "He Touched Me," the Bill Gaither classic, because my dad would say, that's my story. He touched my life. God touched me and changed me and changed our family. And so let's think about this. Let's sing it like we mean it. Think about what we're singing. So I think even then I was beginning to appreciate how powerful and important the words and the lyrics of a song were. And I would watch my dad became the minister of music in our little church there, and he became the choir director for a while. He had no formal training, but he was just a gifted. Before they were really called worship leaders, he was like a gifted worship leader, and he'd take these hymns, and even with the choir and with the congregation, he would say, think about these words. So in a way, I was getting theology sort of taught to me before I even really knew what that word was, because I would listen to these great hymns and these great songs and sing them with my family. And I would sit and watch my dad lead the choir. Before I was old enough, my brother and my mom were in the choir. My dad, would lead the choir, and I always was fascinated. On the front row was this little 4-foot-tall lovely lady. Her name was Hazel Lewis. Her husband was my Sunday school teacher. And I would watch Miss Hazel every Sunday, because she was a tiny lady with the biggest mouth of any person I'd ever seen. And when she sang, she wore bright red lipstick. And so when she sang, her mouth, it was just a fascinating thing, especially. I remember at Christmas, this is my little ADD brain. These are the things I remember. Like at Christmas time, when they would sing that song about glorious eggshells, is what I thought it was. I had no idea. But I would just be fixed on Miss Hazel's lipstick, because when she went for that chorus, her whole head would disappear in just 2 big lips. I was just like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. How does she do that? Somehow, in the midst of all this craziness, little truths were getting into my brain. I don't know how. My mom was a scripture quoting machine. Now she could yell scripture at you, but see, it was okay, because if it's the Bible, you can yell at your kids, apparently. So she would yell these scripture verses as my brother and I are heading out the door every morning. We'd be running to the school bus, and we were always late, and we lived way out in the country. We had about a half-a-mile run to the school bus, and we were always late. You'd hear the horn honking. It was like the routine every morning. Honk, 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 and we'd hear the school bus. And so we'd take off out the door, grabbing our stuff, and all the way down the driveway I'd hear, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Go, hurry up, come on, hurry up. It was chaos. And it was like, in all your ways, acknowledge. And then it would be like, acknowledge him, and he will. And the doors would close on the school bus. That was our timing. Get there before mom's done with that verse. So it was only recently that I looked that verse up to see how it ends, because I never heard the end of that. First, 3/4. But all of that craziness going on, somehow, in the midst of all of that, the truth was finding its way, and these little seeds were getting dropped into my heart. And I would realize, and I'm so thankful, I look back now, and I realize how grateful I am that those seeds were getting planted. There had to be a lot of times when they wondered if this is going anywhere, just going to bounce off, But I think back now and how my journey, so much of my life has been just the living out of so many of the truths. One of my favorite hymns, and we sing it together. We sing it in my church there, in my family, celebrating God's faithfulness. And as I've lived my life, I realized this is the song I could write at the top of the page of every page of my story. And that is, great is his faithfulness. And will you guys, let's celebrate that together. Sing with me. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my God. There is no shadow turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. And as I look back on this road I've traveled, I see so many times he's carried me through. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my life, my Redeemer is faithful and true. And my Redeemer is faithful and true. And everything he has said he will do. And every morning his mercies are new. My Redeemer is faithful and true. And in every situation he has proved his love for me. When I lack the understanding, he gives more grace to me. My Redeemer is faithful and true. And everything he has said he will do. And every morning his mercies are new. My Redeemer is faithful and true. Jesus is faithful and true. So my brother and I mentioned, I have one sibling. One is the older brother, and his name is Herbie, and my dad's name's Herb. So I was kind of glad he was born first, honestly. He got my dad's name, and if there are any Herbs here, please know I honor you. It is a beautiful, honorable name, strong name. But when you're growing up in the era of Herbie the Love Bug movies, it is not the easiest name to have on the playground. So I was kind of glad he got the name, but he also got the golden pipes. He got my dad's voice, and I did not. I was not the singer. I was a guitar player. He was the singer. He was a great singer, still is, and one of my favorites. And so we started singing together, the Chapman brothers. We formed a little duo, and we started to sing around Paducah. We were kind of a big deal. I mean, you might have heard of us, I don't know, and at the Western Baptist Women's Hospital Auxiliary Annual Christmas Program, we were kind of big deal there. And so we started singing together all around town, but we started, our first performance was, we were in first grade, and it's probably the second or third song that I learned on the guitar, because we wanted to perform at the Concord Elementary Annual Fall Festival Talent Show. And so we practiced and practiced and practiced as we were taught to do to get ready for this. And we went to the school and we did our little run through through rehearsal, and then it was time for the show to start. And I started throwing up. I got sick. I had a stomach virus or something, probably nerves, I don't know. But I just know I just started to throw up. And so I could hear them announce in the other room, because I was in a classroom right beside where the auditorium was, and I heard them say, "We're very sorry, but the Chapman brothers will not be able to perform tonight because Steve is sick." And I could hear like thousands of disappointed fans just I think it was maybe 28 mothers, but it sounded like a lot of people to me. And I remember looking at my brother, and I said, "You know what? I've been timing this, Herbie, and I got about 4 minutes. I just threw up. Let's do this. Come on, we can go." Because I knew the show must go on, right? And so we ran out on stage, and real quickly, and I started to strum my guitar, and my brother started to sing our very first song. "Go away, little girl. Go away, little girl. I'm not supposed to be alone with you." It's kind of creepy, actually, when I think about it. I'm like, was anybody thinking about the words of these songs that they were teaching me? But we sang that song, and it was awesome. And I mean, I was looking out there, and I could see all the little girls are falling in love with my brother, and all the teachers are like giving us A's. And I just thought, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened, and I want to do this again and again. And it was amazing. And then it was over, and they clapped, and I ran off stage and threw up. But I was bit. I mean, the bug had gotten me, and I was like, we got to do this some more. We got to keep doing this. And so we kept singing together, and then my brother, he was a great singer, great performer, great entertainer. He went off at 16 years old. He auditioned for a group called the Young Americans, and he got a job touring with them on this traveling tour that they were doing. And so I was left alone, and really that was when I began to write songs more seriously, because he had the voice, and I didn't. And so they called. I remember getting a call for the Chapman brothers, and I said, "Well, I guess you didn't hear the news that we broke up." Kind of like the Beatles and stuff. And but I said, "No, he went off, so it's just me." So, but I got asked to do a solo concert, and I was like, "Well, I don't know if I've never done that," but I sang a little bit, started writing more songs, and I noticed that when I wrote the songs, people, I was more confident in that, because Herbie was the singer. He could sing anybody's song and make it sound good, but not me. But maybe that's, really when I began to kind of find my voice as a songwriter. So anyway, Herbie came home from his travels, and I had just graduated from high school, and so we went together and auditioned. We drove to Nashville, Tennessee, about 2 hours away from Paducah, and auditioned to see if we could get a summer job at a place called Opryland, USA. It was an amusement park. Anybody, you guys heard of Opryland? It was an awesome little park in Nashville that is no more, but somehow, amazingly, we both got hired. I think I was riding my brother's coattails because he was the singer, but they liked the idea of brothers, whatever. And so really, it shocked me, but they hired us both as singers. And so that summer, I graduated high school, there we were, there I was in my Ernest Tubb impression. We would dress up like the stars of the day. That was me doing something that I have never ever done again after that. I don't know how, but they taught us to dance and put us in these goofy costumes, but it was awesome because I was getting to make, a living, make money in the summer doing this job. And then the craziest thing happened. One day, I get a phone call, and occasionally, right in the middle of this park, if you've ever been there or know anything about it, is where they built it around the Grand Ole Opry building, the new Grand Ole Opry house, or newer from several years ago, but that's what the park was built around. And so every now and then they would invite kids from the park to come be on the Grand Ole Opry. Well, I got a phone call one day, and I was invited to come sing on the Grand Ole Opry. Now, my dad, that was his dream when he was younger, when he was coming to Nashville. And he laid that dream down when he really began to want to live his life to honor God and to be a dad and be in his kids' lives. And he put that dream of trying to be a country singer, be on the Grand Ole Opry, he laid it down. So when I called him to tell him, "Dad, guess what? I've been asked to sing on the Grand Ole Opry," he was so excited. My mom was so excited. My brother, who really, I thought they honestly, when they called, I said, now you mean Herbie Chapman, right? You don't mean Steve. But they said, no, we want you. So my brother was so proud of me and excited. He's sitting out in the audience. My mom, my dad, my brother, my grandmother, who raised my dad alone and just prayed for him and prayed for me. She was there. She's with Jesus now, but she's there. And so it's the coolest moment. I'm 19 years old. It was the summer of 1982, July the 31st. And there's the program. There I am. Anybody know the name Roy Acuff? I mean, that's kind of, if you know country music, that is a big deal. So here I am, and I walk out on stage, and Roy Acuff introduces me, and my dad is out there just like, it's Roy Acuff, it's a grand old guy. And I'm out, and I walk out on stage, and I'm going to sing the song that I sing every day in the park when I'm dressed up in those goofy costumes. There's one song that's kind of my big moment in the show. So this is the song I choose to sing on the Grand Ole Opry. Everybody knows this song. One of the greatest country songs ever written. The band hits the chord and I start. He stopped a loving heart today. And then I forgot the words. I am not even kidding. I mean, it was like, I think it was just the moment. It's like my dad and my mom and Roy Acuff and the Grand Ole Opry. Poof, my brain just like empties out of all knowledge. And so I literally am standing up here just like, I don't know my name. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm looking, and the worst part was it was like those dreams you had, those nightmares, that because everybody in the whole audience knows the words, and so they're all trying to help this dumb kid on stage right now. And they're all like trying to mouth the words to me. Like, they placed a wreath upon his door. And the band is behind me, and they realize that I've forgotten the words, so they're all trying to help me. I can hear them back here say, hey, I can't tell what they're saying. And literally, I'm like on stage, like going, what? I can't tell. I'm telling you, it was so awful. And I'm just thinking, well, that was a short career, 30 seconds of a career. Somehow, I don't know, by the grace of God, I got through it, and I picked up where I was, and it seemed like 2 hours. It was probably 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but it was terrible. Anyway, I got through it. I got done. I really do think, as I look back on it, that was another one of those moments when I thought I should maybe sing the songs that I've written, because if I forget those words and make it up, nobody's going to know the difference. Anyway. But if I'm singing these famous songs, people are going to know when I mess it up. And so, anyway, that summer, during that summer, I met a guy who he came to one of the shows in the park, and he was a college student in a school up in Indiana. Anyway, he came back after the little show we did, and he said, hey, I loved watching you and your brother together, and somebody told me you guys are Christians and that you sing gospel music. And he said, I love gospel music. I'm kind of involved in that a little bit and write it and play it. And he said, play me some songs you've written. So I played him a song or two, and he said, wow, those are really good. If you gave me a recording of those, I'd love to take them back to a friend of mine in Indiana who publishes gospel music and is a writer and might be able to help you. And I thought, well, that's awesome, yeah. So I sent him a copy, just a little, real simple demo of my songs, and went on to college at the end of that summer to a little school in Kentucky where I entered as a pre-med major because I was dumb and I don't know what I was thinking, because my dad said that I needed to go to school and get a real job because it was hard, to provide for a family playing a guitar, so I should go get a real job first. So I thought, okay, real job, doctor, that's what I'll do. And that's about how much thought I gave it, I'm not kidding. Which is not the best way to go into something like that, I found out. And so I got to college and very quickly realized that I was not, I think as they said, pre-med material, is what they said. And so I'm just struggling. It's awful. And I remember like one day I'm getting out of chemistry class where I'm just so confused. I'm like just sinking down so far. There's no way I'm going to recover from this. And I realized this has been a big mistake. And I'm, writing songs and all of this. But I get a phone call. And this guy that I gave my music to said, hey, I passed your music on to my friend I told you about. He's going to call you because I think he wants to talk to you. And so I get a phone call, and this person on the other end of the line says, hey, I've heard your songs. I think you've got a gift. I think you've got something special. I want to publish these songs, and I'd like to work with you and kind of mentor you. My name is Bill Gaither, by the way. Now, I don't know if some of you know that name. So, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, right, and I'm Elvis Presley, yeah, for sure. I almost said that because I thought, there's no way this is really who this is. Anyway, as quickly as I could, see, Bill was in Indiana, and that's where this guy was. So I quickly transferred, left school there in Kentucky, went to Indiana, and began going to a school there, in Anderson, Indiana, called Anderson College. And I started writing songs. I got to hang out with Bill and Gloria Gaither, and learning about writing, and just, my life is one massive example of one of my favorite scriptures, and that is, we make our plans, but God directs our steps, And it really is true for all of us. And one of the things about looking back at our story and retelling our story, we can't help but see that, in our life. And I know in my case, I'm looking back going, that's crazy, that doesn't happen. And so I'm going to Indiana, I go to Anderson College. I'm in my third year there. I'm getting to write songs and do all of this. And singing with my brother, he goes there, Herbie goes with me, and we have a little group, we're singing together. And it's about the second day of my third year of school. I'm walking across campus with a friend of mine, Greg, and this vision of beauty comes walking towards us. It's like time stands still, and her hair is blowing in the wind, and the violins start to play, and I'm like, whoa. And so she passes us, and she says, hi, Greg. And my friend says, hi, Mary Beth. And she goes by, and I said, who is that? And he said, that is a freshman. I just met her last night, and her name is Mary Beth Chapman. Her last name is Chapman. You guys could be related. And my first thought was, I hope not. So, because I'm very fascinated with this person. And then a little light bulb goes off, and I realize, wait a minute. I've heard that name before because I've seen her name on mail in my mailbox at the college, where you pick up your mail. We were sharing a mailbox together. So I was like, this is awesome. And now I need to go find this person. So I set out to pursue her. Now my kids would call it stalking, but it was pursuing. I might have had a few spies out, looking, and they would call, my dorm room when they spotted Mary Beth somewhere, and I'd get these messages. Just had a Mary Beth's, sighting. She's coming in hot, 11 o'clock. And I'd run out front and try to be standing in front of my dorm when she just happened to walk by, so I could just kind of, hey. And anyway, I found her in the cafeteria a few days later. I sat down and introduced myself, and we had a meal together, and she was just awesome. I was like, this is the most amazing person on the planet. I want to know more. So I met her again and again, and finally I got up my courage to ask her on a date. And I took her to Red Lobster because I needed to really impress her. Because I'm telling you, that mullet combined with popcorn shrimp and cheese biscuits, that's a recipe for love if there ever is one. Okay. Maybe throw in a little members only jacket just to sweeten the deal. So there we were. And somehow, after a year of many meals together and much time spent together, I asked her to share a mailbox with me forever. And she said yes, and that was 34 years ago. I could sing a lot of songs to you tonight about the faithfulness of God in my life. But this song, the fact that I can sing this song, still to my bride, that I wrote about 29 years ago when we were just starting our journey. And I knew pretty quickly that, we were in for quite an adventure. But the fact that I can still sing this song that I wrote for her all these years later is only, please know, it is all and only because of God's faithfulness as we have continued to just say, God, we are so broken and we're so messed up and we need your help. And I'm so thankful that I can sing this song and mean it more now than the day I wrote it, for the love of my life. And a song that's special to a lot of folks as well, maybe for some of you. Tomorrow morning if you wake up and the sun does not appear, I will be here. If in the dark we lose sight of love, hold my hand and have no fear. 'Cause I will be here. I will be here when you feel like being crying, when you need to speak your mind. I will listen and I will be here when the laughter turns to crying, through the winning, losing and trying. I will be here. I will be true to the promise I have made, to you and to the one who gave to me. And just as sure as the seasons were made for change, our lifetimes were made for these years. So I will be here, we'll be together. Oh yes we will, 'cause I will be here. I will be here. So Mary Beth and I pack up our green Ford Pinto, and in case you don't know what that is, it is not a horse. It is a car, or at least an attempt at a car, and that was our car, and we packed up everything we owned and we headed to Nashville, Tennessee, and it was, we had literally about $50 to our name at that point, and but I was gonna, go after the music thing, and she went to work to try to, as she said, support my music habit at that point. And but she was all in and excited for me and with me, and we just thought, gosh, this is going to be so easy, for us, same last name. I mean, and we just have everything in common. It's going to be almost unfair how easy this is going to be for us. And that lasted like 2 hours, I think, into our marriage, when we began to realize, wait a second. Wait a minute, we are some really messed up, broken people dragging, just bags of baggage into our marriage. So pretty quickly we knew we need to wait a few years before we bring any children into this craziness of our life. And so we were going to wait, 4, 5, 6 years, and we kind of decided that, made our plans, right? But we did decide to get a puppy as like an experiment to see if we could raise something, a living creature. And so we got this little puppy that we named Peso. And so that was my wife's little buddy, and we loved this little dog. But as puppies do, Peso chewed up everything in our little apartment, including one day my wife's purse. He dragged, or she dragged the purse off of the couch and chewed up everything inside my wife's purse, including this medicine that my wife took on like a daily basis at that time. And basically, so the puppy never took the, ate the medicine, never had any puppies after that, if you're following me. Got kind of moody, kind of changed a little bit, but it never had puppies. But my wife now, on the other end, because she didn't have that medicine for a few days, 9 months later, she had not a puppy. She had Emily. Our little girl Emily was born. And there it is. I love that picture. Look at the peso sitting there like, boy, I didn't have anything to do with this. I don't know. So Emily came into our life, and Emily is exactly and was exactly what God knew we needed, right? We thought, we'd been married just barely over a year when Emily, came into our world. And God knew exactly what we needed. And I wouldn't write this song until several years later, but it was evident right out of the gate, and especially when I look back, at all the ways that God's fingerprints were on Emily. So here's a little bit of this one. I can see the tears filling your eyes, and I know where they're coming from. Coming from a heart that's broken in two by what you don't see. Person in the mirror doesn't look like the magazine. Oh, but when I look at you, it's clear to me that I can see the fingerprints of God. When I look at you, oh, I can see the fingerprints of God. And I know it's true, you're a masterpiece, and all creation quietly applauds. And you cover with the fingerprints of God. Yes, you are. You were covered with the fingerprints of God. Oh, So, Emily, we have Emily. We are very blessed. Just within about 3.5 years, find out that we're going to have another baby. It's a little boy. His name is Caleb, and so we're awesome. This is great. Now I'm starting to get really busy, and I'm gone a lot on the road. I'm saddling up my horses, all that kind of business. And Mary Beth is at home, so she's like, "This is a lot, and you're gone a lot. So we might be good here with 2 children. We're not sure." And so we went to a birthday party. We went to Chuck E. Cheese. Do you guys have Chuck E. Cheese? All right. So we're at 1 million birthday parties at this point in our life with our little ones. And Caleb is 6 months old, and Emily's about 4 years old. And my wife goes to the bathroom. I'm standing at the salad bar, kind of loading up my plate, and my wife comes walking out of the bathroom, tears streaming down her face. And I'm like, okay, what is going on? This is weird. And right there, she decides is the place and time to announce to me that we are going to have a 3rd child. Because of course, that's what you would do at Chuck E. Cheese, at the salad bar. Because apparently she was feeling weird, and on the way there, we had stopped at a pharmacy, and she'd gone in and bought this little test thing and decided that she was going to just find out. And so here we were, and she tells me this while I have 6-month-old Caleb right here beside me in a little rocking seat. And Emily's playing and getting her tickets and all that stuff like you do there. And so she comes walking over. And right when this happens, I'm in a state of shock. My wife's crying, and Emily walks up, and she says, "Mom, why are you crying?" I mean, we're at Chuck E. Cheese. This is like a happy place. "Did you lose your tickets, Mom?" And my wife says to my daughter, "No, Mom just found out we're going to have another baby." And Emily, no kidding, my little 4-year-old girl, she puts her hands on her hips like this. She says, "What in the world are we going to do with another baby?" And my wife said, "That's why I'm crying." So, 9 months later, Will Franklin comes into the picture. So here we go. Now, if you heard me back in those days, I would talk about my family. I always have, because they are they're woven into everything. I've written the songs, the music, my faith, everything. And so I would talk about my kids, and I would always say, we have 3 children. Their nicknames are Eenie, Meenie, and Miney, and we ain't having no more, right? Some of y'all heard me say it. Because we were done. That's it. Done. So Emily goes to Haiti on a mission trip. She comes home. She's 12 years old. Right about the time I wrote that song, Fingerprints of God, she comes home. And she's amazing. She, from day one, she was just had a tender heart. Anytime she saw someone in need, she was like, we need to help them. So she came home from this trip and she said, Mom, Dad, there are children in the world that don't have families. They don't have what I have. And that is not right. So we need to do something about it. We need to adopt some of these children. We have a big enough home. I'll share my stuff. I'll share my room. And so we just very, would quickly just said, Emily, that is a beautiful thing that when you grow up and have your own house, you should totally do that. But that is not going to happen. That is not our plan. And then my wife said, no. And so that was it. Well, Emily, hands on the hip, Emily. She's like, well, I'm going to pray about this. I think you're wrong. You should pray about this. And she would write notes and leave them to us. And no kidding, she bought a book on international adoption. She took her Christmas money and bought this big old thick book about international adoption. And so she would read to her mom whenever she was in the car and her mom was a captive audience. And she would say, Mom, did you know that in China there are this many children that don't have families, and here's how much it costs, and here are the rules, and and in Africa, and it's like she was giving her mom and me this education on the needs of the children all over the world that don't have families, and it was just breaking her heart. She would write notes to us and leave them on our pillow at night. You come to bed. I'm not kidding. We have one that says basically this: Mom and Dad, are you praying about adoption? She asked the question. Because if you're not, you could be living in disobedience to God's will. Be very careful what you teach your children, because they can use it. Anyway, she was right, because we had made our plans, but God was directing our steps, and He used our daughter. And an amazing story, and I wish, I love that I finally got to put it in my book, where I really got to go into the details. And my wife wrote an amazing book called Choosing to See, where she tells from her perspective, just over and over, the ways that God showed His sense of humor, how whimsical and just crazy. I mean, the little things that you could not call coincidence that God did in our life and our journey to keep directing us to this thing that He knew was so much better than what our plan was for us. Not all easy, certainly not comfortable, but He knew what an incredible gift He was inviting us into. And that's really what it was. It was God inviting us. Not, if you don't do this, I'm really going to be disappointed in you, which is, my concept in many ways of how God deals with us. But it was so amazing. We finally, March of 2000, we all traveled to China, and we met for the first time, standing in the little hallway of a hotel in Changsha, China. We met this little girl that we would name Shohana, and we call her Shoei. And a little girl that was left, abandoned, found on a little pathway in a village, brought to an orphanage, and this amazing way that God would, weave our stories together. And I wish, I could tell you all about it, but what I'll say is of the many miraculous things that would happen and have continued to. My wife, standing in that hotel hallway, would explain how terrified she was every step of the way, all the way even until that moment when she walked out of the hotel. She was so afraid of what she would feel, of what she did feel, of would she be able to love this child enough. All the fear, all the questions, and yet she knew it was so obvious that this was the journey that God was putting us on. And so in that moment when this little girl was put in her arms, my wife basically explained it like it's her whole being just wrapped around this little person that she'd never laid eyes on. And she said it was nothing I could have prepared myself for, but in an instant, it's like she was a part of me, and nothing. She even told me, said, if they had come and said, I'm sorry, we made a mistake, we're going to need to take this little girl back. She said, I would have said, well, you're going to have to take my life, because there's nothing that's going to take her out of my heart and out of my life. And it was then my wife would say, if she was standing here, that after many years of wrestling with how does God love me, how do I understand grace, performance, so much is performance. If God likes me if I'm doing good, He's mad at me if I'm doing bad. And she said in that moment, God just, not audibly, but whispered very clearly to her heart, more clearly than she'd ever heard anything. And God said, this is how it is that I love you. Nothing can separate you from my love. And you haven't done one thing, and you can't do anything to earn it or deserve it. That's what my love is. That's what grace is. And nothing can separate you from that. And so for her, what a gift for me as a husband who loves my wife and watch her have this incredible just revelation of God's grace and God's love. And for me as well. So anyway, we come home and it's like our family, we're just loving on Shoei, and we bring her home to introduce her to all of our friends. We land in Nashville at the airport. All of us are traveling together. All the kids went with us, Emily and Caleb and Will Franklin. And we get off the plane. We have everybody there to welcome us and cheer, you know. And as we walk to our car to get our bags, there are probably 4 or 5 families who say something to us along the lines of this. We're so excited for you guys. We're so happy for you. We would love to adopt someday. We have it in our heart. We have a room at our table, a room in our home. We would love to bring a child in. We just can't afford it. We just don't have the money in our bank account right now because it's really expensive. And my wife, who had just walked through the orphanage that Shoei came from and had been given for the year leading up to this education on international and domestic adoption, thank you to our daughter, she had all this understanding now of the need, and we knew there were millions and millions of children all over the world waiting for their story to begin, to have this incredible experience. And now we knew as parents and as a family, this amazing experience that we've just had, this miracle that has just transformed our life. And now here's a family standing in front of my wife saying, if we just had the money, we would take one of those children that needs a family. We'd love to give them a home. And all my wife can see are all these little eyes that were looking at her when we walked through Shohana's orphanage, that were looking up at us like, will you take me too? So my wife just, basically, she starts writing checks. She's like, are you kidding me? You'll go get a child right now? You go right there. And I'm going, wait a minute, because there's like a line starting to form. And she's writing checks faster than I'm writing songs. And basically, that's how Show Hope began. You've heard about, if you came in and you saw maybe on your seat there something about Show Hope. If you know anything about the Chapmans, you've heard about the work of Show Hope. Basically, we began to dream right then about what if we could help families that want to adopt children, but just find that they can't get the process completed because they need support. They need somebody to cheer them on and financially come alongside them. So we started dreaming huge. We're like, what if we could help 10 families? Let's go crazy. Let's say, what if we could help 100 families? And we can't do it ourselves. What if I tell about it to other people and, make some noise and sing a song and try to get other people to know that there are families, Christian families, that want to bring these children in, and families that are reading James 1:27, true religion, and they're like, hey, we'll take the front line because it takes all of us together. It's not, all of us are the goers, some are the senders, that thing. And so we're like, well, let's see what maybe we could do. What if we could help 100 families, 100 children somewhere in the world come into a family? And I just heard the latest numbers because we were in meetings last week. We have board meetings coming up next week. We're in the office. Mary Beth's there every day in Show Hope offices. And we just just crossed over 6,200 families that we've been able to help, and children from all over the world. Coming to Christian families, coming to homes, to know that not only do they have a family here on earth that's going to care for them and love them, but they have a Father in heaven that knit them together. And even if they're broken, even if their story is broken, even if sometimes their bodies medically, they've got issues and they seem broken, that God has a plan for them and has a story that He's telling with their lives. And so 6,200 now that we've had the privilege of being a part of these miracles and watching the ripples that go out, because those ripples out of those 6,200 have impacted millions of people's lives, hundreds of thousands, and even millions, just from the stories. And we know that. It's been such an amazing thing. And as you can imagine, I've written a lot of songs inspired by this unbelievable transformational experience. And I want to sing, this is the first song I wrote about this after we brought Shohana home. Because it's one of those things where your heart is so broken because you realize such a huge need in the world and you're confronted with it right here, but your heart is so full at the same time. And it's an interesting thing how God does that sometimes to us. Fills our heart, and then we're broken over, the brokenness in our world. And so, I wrote this song because I wanted to help myself remember and others that there are so many children waiting for their story to begin, and yet the profound impact that happens when love, takes all of us in. And so I wrote this song, and we did this video when Shoei was about 3 years old. So this was many years ago. And one of the things that I love when I get to share this song in concert is you will see in this video families. About halfway through the video, you'll start to see home movies of families kind of becoming a family, children being adopted, and kind of the moment when they're first meeting, sometimes at the airport or at the orphanage. And these are just little miracle moments that I love that we got to capture from some of the families that have received help from Shoho. And I love getting to share their stories. My hope when you watch this, above anything else, is that you'll remember, and there's that word again, that you'll remember through this that this is our story, that this is the reality for the hope that any of us can have, is because God did not leave us as orphans. He has come for us. He sent Jesus for us. And now we have a future and a hope in Him. And so as you watch this, I'm hoping that that's what, more than anything, you will see, and you'll be reminded. It'll help you remember that when love takes you in, everything changes. I know you've heard the stories. They all sound too good to be true. You've heard about a place called home, but there doesn't seem to be one for you. So one more night you cry yourself to sleep and drift off to the distant dream where love takes you in. And everything changes. A miracle starts with a beat of a heart when love takes you home. Says you belong here. Loneliness ends and a new life begins, and this love will never let you go. There is nothing that will ever cause this love to lose its hold. Where love takes you in, everything changes. A miracle starts with a beat of a heart when love takes you home. Loneliness ends and a new life begins when love takes you in. It takes you in for good. When love takes you in. We are your sons and We are your daughters. Hallelujah. We are who you say we are. And we lift our heads and cry, Abba, Father. Hallelujah. We are who you say we are. Hallelujah. We are who you say we are. Hallelujah. We are who you say we are. Amazing story. You know, God wasn't done messing up our plan, clearly, because we had eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and then it turns out there was much, much more planned for us, because we would return back a couple of years later and bring home a little girl named Stevie Joy. And then I was on a trip in China. One of my dreams when we came home with Shoei was, God, could I come back and share music and tell about the love that you've shown me? Could I maybe sing about your love in China? That's crazy, and I know it couldn't happen, but that's what I want to do. And my wife wanted to help the children that were still there, that were going to be left behind, specifically in China, because of medical needs. And so I got to go back. I got to go back with a very dear friend, one of the greatest preachers of our time, Luis Palau. And I went on a trip with him, and I was there under strict orders from my wife to not even look at it, especially not hold any more little girls that needed a family. But I met a little girl named Maria who needed a family, and I fell in love with this little girl standing in the parking lot of a church after a church service on a Sunday morning. And this little girl was with a family that was foster caring for her at the time. And I held her, and I called my wife later, and I said, I met this little girl, her name's Maria. And my wife said, don't even think about it, just stop right there. I said, I know, but just pray for Maria, because something about this little girl is very special. Pray for her. Pray God sends a family. I get home a week later, and my wife has paperwork on the kitchen counter waiting for me to sign it for us to go back and begin the process to bring Maria home. And so that's how we ended up having eeny, meeny, miny, mo, mo, mo. And you know, just amazingly, you know, God began to allow us to do so much to help so many families. In that video, every time I show it, you know, those 6,200 families, there are thousands of families, you know, that we haven't been able to help, who have gone through all the process, fill out the form, do everything, and totally, you know, we would love to help. And my wife comes home every month when they have the grant meetings where they sit with every family and they pray over and pour over and weep over these family stories that want to bring these children home. And we run out of money before we run out of families to help. And so we've continued to tell the story and invite people to be a part of the work of Show Hope to help us help every one of these families that come to us. Well, as we have been doing that, we spent more and more time in China. And we began to dream about how we might be able to help some of those children there specifically. Now, the grants that we give to families, that's to help adopt children from domestically, from all over the world. 63 different countries, I believe it is now, that children have come home by way of Show Hope grants into Christian families. So the impact of that, just all over the world, you know, is amazing. And yet we wanted to do something in China. We began to dream with a couple that we met there in China who God had just kind of put it on their heart. They were not Chinese, but they were living there, working there, visited an orphanage, began to get to know some of the orphanage directors, and found these children that were literally dying. There was no way that they could be cared for. And they began to take one at a time. And because this lady is a doctor, and said, I think I can help these children. Can we take them in? And so they began this amazing little work that we discovered on one of our trips there as Christians, just trying in a place where you can't openly, freely preach the gospel necessarily, but you can certainly live it and do it. And so we loved what they were doing, and we began to pray about and dream about what if we could do something to partner with you guys to help these children that aren't going to be able to be adopted because of the medical needs and the issues that they have where they're not even recognized as adoptable by the government. And so we started to pray about that and dream about how we could help more and more of these children. My wife, Mary Beth, just was passionate about doing this. So as we began to dream about maybe building a place that could help these children, it was around the time that 10 years ago when many of you prayed for our family as we walked through the darkest season that we could ever have imagined, when our little Maria, a few days after her 5th birthday, went home to be with Jesus as a result of a tragic accident at our home. And this is a part of my story that obviously I don't like at all, and it still has so many hard parts about it for us. But what I can tell you, as I've looked back and as we are able now, 10 years, to see some of how God has been at work, even in this story, part of our story that is still so hard and we still don't like and still wrestle with. But when we lost Maria, so many of you prayed for us, and it literally sent waves all over the world. We had people praying for us all the way in China and Australia and everywhere. And as only God could do this, somehow through our brokenness, God would allow that to tender the hearts of even communist government officials in China that we had been given favor with because of my music, because of the work that we were doing. And we had had meals with these people, and we had sat with them. So they knew us, and they knew our story. And suddenly we were given this opportunity, favor with the government of China, to be able to ultimately, because of the gifts and the love that a lot of people poured out on us when we lost Maria, we set up something called Maria's Miracle Fund to try to do something that would honor her memory and yet help these children in China. And out of that, we were able to build a place called Maria's Big House of Hope. It's in Luoyang, China, and there's a picture of it, and it's just one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, I think. And it's even to show God's amazing sense of humor. You know, it looks like something out of Toy Story. We didn't plan for it to be painted that way. We actually thought that the very little top square of that building was going to be blue with white clouds, and then everything else on the building was going to be standard gray, Chinese gray buildings like they all are. And apparently we don't speak Mandarin very well. And we drove up the first time to see the building, and there it was, looking like that, which is just so awesome, as only God could do it, because it kind of sticks out just a little bit in China. This 6-story building with Maria's flower painted all over. That's the flower that Maria drew the day she went to be with Jesus. And so there's just so much about that building that's miraculous. And even locals there, we have heard through translators going out among the villagers that the locals there call this place the house where God lives. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. So just the way God has even used this loud building that's screaming life in the middle of, in the middle of China has been an amazing thing. And now it's one of 5 care centers that God has allowed us to have access to be able to help thousands of children. Now we know of over 700 children. Many of them that come to this are not going to survive. And in fact, some don't. Some were able to just love until they go into the arms of Jesus, and we're able to care for them, and they're made comfortable, and they know someone's there to weep for them, instead of, in the other case, they would die alone in a room somewhere with no one even there. And so even that we believe is a gift that God's allowed us to just be a part of these stories, because these are all eternal stories, right? Every one of these lives. And we've been just given this incredible opportunity in China now to help hundreds of children are in our care there, with full medical facilities and care for them, nurses and doctors and a medical staff, and we employ over 200 ladies from China that are being impacted by the message of God's love because they're just exposed to it all the time. So it's amazing, and we have the opportunity to do so much more. There are many, many more children. There are empty beds and empty rooms in the facilities that we have. So because it's expensive. So as God provides, we try to do more and more as much as we can. Well, I told you all this story because I want to, just before I take a little break, I want to invite you to consider, and really it is purely that, an invitation for you to consider helping us and joining us in the work of Show Hope, because there is incredible opportunity in front of us. And that's really what it is, just opportunities. I don't think God's standing there with a big clipboard going, did you do this, did you not do that, smiling or frowning accordingly. I think God is just inviting us in. I just want you to experience something that will change your life while it's changing the life for eternity of a child, of a family. And so for that reason, I put on your seats a little invitation from Mary Beth and me. Literally it says, Mary Beth and I invite you to join us. And if you look in here, and I hope you did, if you haven't yet, take this out and look at it. There's some pictures just showing the story of Show Hope. And you'll see pictures of me doing a concert at Maria's Big House of Hope for some of the little people there. Picture of Mary Beth and me in front of Maria's. Pictures of families that we've been able to help with financial assistance. And then you'll find a little note in here from us, from Mary Beth and me, just saying thank you for being here, and just would you pray about joining us if God puts it on your heart. And then a note, a little card that says, yes, I want to become a Show Hope sponsor. For $35 a month, there's a little box you can check, or there's another box where you can put a different amount per month. If you can do more than that, it'd be awesome. And then, or if you would like to give a one-time gift, there's a place for you to do that too. Listen, I know that $35 a month is a lot of money. And I also know this. There are many great organizations, and some of you may already be sponsors of different organizations. God bless you. Continue to do that. What I can say, because I watch and I've seen the tears and the heart and the blood and sweat that has been poured in to this work of Show Hope. I've watched the hours that my wife stays awake at night, many nights, late into the night. Now our daughter, 32-year-old Emily, is working at Show Hope. We have a staff of about 26 back in Franklin, Tennessee, and a staff of hundreds in China. I know how seriously we and they take this. And if God puts it on your heart to entrust something to us, what I can tell you with all my heart is we take that very, very seriously, how we steward that. And it's very important to us that we honor God with it, and we honor you with it, because I honor the relationship that we have through my music all these years. So we want to invite you to consider tonight joining us and becoming a Show Hope sponsor. Maybe as a family you take $35, once a month. What if you say, we're not going to go out and eat. We're going to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We're going to take a night and go on the computer, read these family stories. If you're a sponsor, you get special invitation into the stories. You get access to hear the stories of the children and the families. You get updates regularly that make you know you're right in the middle of these stories with us. We'd love to take you to China. We take teams to Maria's Big House of Hope, medical teams and just teams of students and sponsors. We'd love to have you come with us and experience it firsthand, what God's doing there. It'll change your life. But maybe you could consider that as a family or as an individual. Here's something that we could do. If God stirs in your heart to do that, we really believe God's not called everybody to adopt. We really know that. But I really believe, if you look at Scripture, in some way, pray for us, become a sponsor. Some way, I think God's called all of us to be involved in caring for children without families. It's James 1:27. It's true religion. God is the father to the fatherless, as he defines himself. So I do believe this is on his heart. So I encourage you to consider joining us tonight. If that's something you can do, fill that card out. Go to the Show Hope table back there in the back and turn it in to one of our volunteers. We have some volunteers here. Or turn it in to Peter. If you join us tonight, I got a couple of gifts that I just want to say thank you and give you a gift if you become a Show Hope sponsor tonight and start your sponsorship. I'd love to give you a copy of my book. It's very thick. I'm sorry. It's a lot of pages, but it does have pictures in it, so that helps. I got a lot, as you can tell. I'll have a lot to say. And then also a gift, and these are for sale back there, but for Show Hope sponsors tonight, it's a gift I'd love to give you. This is a new album of a live concert we recorded just like this one tonight in Muscle Shoals several months ago that only is available at the concerts. We're not selling this online or anywhere else. So something that you can check out back there. But thank you for letting me share this story. I know that's a lot, but it's so important, and I want to invite you to be a part of it. All right? Y'all take a little break. Please go join us for your show. Hope sponsor with us tonight. I would love that if you would join us. And then we're going to take a break. Don't go far. I promise I won't keep you as long the second half. But we have got a few things we have to do before I let you go, like saddle up horses, dance with Cinderella, dive in, all that stuff. So we're going to do that in a little bit. All right? I'll see you in a minute. Thank y'all so much.